Hi, Pastor Nathan Decker with your hashtag Better Together devotion, and I'm talking this week about theologies and understandings that developed over time within the biblical text. And so yesterday I talked about Jesus, and you might even call him the hero of the text, especially for us as Christians. Well, let's talk about the other fella. Let's talk about the enemy. Let's talk about the bad guy. Let's talk about him for a little bit. Well, interestingly enough, when we start looking for Satan, and specifically I'm using just specifically Satan as a name here, when we start looking for Satan in the Bible, you only find him exactly one time within the Old Testament and several times within the New Testament, obviously. So what's the deal here? And some of you are immediately going, wait a minute now, I just Googled it, and he shows up at least twice in the Old Testament. He's in the book of Job, too. And that's where I want to start unpacking. So we in Christian theology want to have Satan be all kinds of characters and places within the Old Testament where we are, instead of allowing the text to just be and speak for itself, we are bringing this theology of Satan to the text and flattening it on top of the text so that it's the lens through which we are reading. The text never calls the serpent in the garden Satan or the devil or anything else. From the text's perspective, that is just a snake who happens to be able to talk and tempt people. But it's still just a snake. Some people will go for the morning star imagery that's within the book of Isaiah and other places. And that is also a place where it's just not talking about the same understanding that we have with our theology over here. We're flattening it on top of the text, and we're reading it through that theology instead of allowing the Bible to speak for itself. So let's unpack. Where did this whole theology come from that we've got that we're starting to flatten on top of that text? Well, in the book of Job, for example, you have this concept of ha-satan. Ha meaning the in the Hebrew text. So the Satan is a position. It's his job. Why else would he show up to God's kingdom and in God's courts? It's because God has appointed him to be the one who goes and persecutes and tests people. It's a really disconcerting story when you understand that God kind of hired this guy out to go and do all this stuff to Job. It's really messed up. So that character is that. Well, that character develops over time to become the pitchfork, red tights, horned guy that we have in our Christian theology that you find within 2 Chronicles, where in 2 Chronicles you find the whole temptation of David, and it is listed as Satan. Now a name, not a title. Satan tempts David to take a census. Well, what's funny about that particular story is you can also go all the way back into the Samuel texts and also read the exact same story. Only the problem there is that those texts will say, God tempted David. You see, here's the difference, is that in the Jewish understanding, both good and bad temptation early on all came from God. With some probably intermingling with the Persians and Zoroastrianism and this dualism nature that was further east in the Orient, there came to be an understanding that maybe temptation came from somewhere else. And we start talking about temptation as coming from Satan. And by the time you get to the New Testament and Jesus' temptations in the Gospels, definitely you have Satan as the one who is the tempter. Our theologies change. Our theologies aren't the same as they used to be. And maybe, just maybe, unpacking that gives us some understanding about who we are and even allows us to say, hey, maybe I shouldn't continue being the way I am. Think about the theologies and beliefs you have and grow and evolve where God leads and the text speaks. This is Pastor Nathan Decker encouraging you to be better together. Amen.